All right, so today we're talking about Alexander the Great. Thank you, Alexander the Great. The time period we're talking about is the 300s BC. So the 400s was the age of the Persian Wars and the Peloponnesian Wars. As we go into the 300s, this will be the age of Macedonia, the rise of Macedonia. And we'll be taking this all the way to 323 BC. This is kind of an interesting date. If you want to remember an exact date, 323 would be a really good one to remember, because at 323 Alexander dies and we are basically done with the Greeks. We will be shifting over to the Romans at that point. The place we're talking about is Macedonia. On this map it is in red. It is north of the classical Greeks. They are Greek. The Macedonians are Greek. They speak Greek. But this is not the hotbed of culture. We've been talking about the Greeks of the Peloponnesus and the Greeks, Athens here, and the Greek mainland. This is north of that. So this will be considered kind of almost a hillbilly Greeks, backwater Greeks, Dark Age Greeks. In fact, they still live in basically the Dark Ages. They have a king. And the king at this time we're talking about is a king named Philip of Macedonia. We've actually found his tomb, and they've done a reconstruction of his skull, and we think this is what he looked like here, missing an eye in battle, as many Greeks probably were missing an eye or a nose or an ear or something. He's Philip of Macedonia. He became king in 359 and to 336, so about 20 years there he's king, and he's a great one. He deserves the title Philip the Great, actually, if it wasn't for his son, who's going to be even greater than he was. He spent his youth, the man who would be king, spent his youth watching the Greeks. He actually traveled down to mainland Greece, Sparta, Athens, Thebes, and watched them. And during the time of his early reign, there was a great war between Thebes and Sparta, and he watched it. He would actually go out and watch the battles and how the Greeks fought. And he recognized that warfare could be done differently. He will, when he goes back to Macedonia, will institute some tactical changes in the in the Macedonian army. What tactical changes mean, if you're wondering about strategy and tactics, strategy would be something where you're looking at a map of how you're going to defeat your enemy. Tactical would be actually on the battlefield, face to face with the enemy. Some things he institutes are cavalry. The Greeks didn't use cavalry much. It was all about the phalanx, all about the foot soldier. Well, the Macedonians are more horsemen. Macedonia is more open area, more forest and plains, and so there's a lot more horsemen there. In fact, his nobles, his upper echelon of soldiers, they all ride horses. And he rides with them. He is a cavalryman. He calls his cavalry his companions. That tells you something about their relationship. They are close to him. They're his drinking buddies. They're his riding buddies. They're his warrior buddies. He's really close with the cavalry. But they do have infantry also. And for his infantry, he will institute a much longer spear. Now, the Greeks would use a spear, an overhand spear, maybe 7 or 8 foot long. For his infantrymen, he's going to give them longer spears. In fact, the size of a pike, we would say. How big? Well, about twice as long as the other Greeks. Anywhere from 15 to 20 foot. We actually have some of these. They're called sarissas. And we have some of these. We found them. And some of them were so long they had to be screwed together. They were like double spears. And the idea would be that if a Greek comes at you and he wants to meet you face to face, he wouldn't get anywhere close to you. You were going to have a wall of these gigantic spikes coming at you, at the enemy. So the enemy's not even going to be able to close. In fact, the Macedonians won't even need much of a shield. They'll just have these giant wall of pikes in their phalanx. And then he also adds light infantry. He watched the Greeks, and many Greeks can't participate because they can't afford the armor. Well, for the Macedonians, yeah, we're going to have a training program. Young Greek men can enter the light infantry, such things as slingers. You know, ammunition is laying all over the ground. Just pick up a rock and sling it at somebody with a leather sling. Javelin throwers, just a light spear that can be thrown across the battlefield. So he'll have guys throwing javelins on the battlefield. He'll have archers. The Greeks did not like archers. They thought this was a cowardly way of fighting. Well, you know, archers can put some damage on people. If nothing else, they distract you. A rain of arrows coming down. So if you're attacking him, you're going to have to face a wall of sling stones coming at you, javelins coming across the battlefield, arrows raining down on you. And then if you ever get the chance to get near the phalanx, you're going to get hit by a wall of spikes that looks something like this, something like a porcupine. So you won't even hit shields with them. You won't even get close to them before they're running you through with these giant pikes. This is the Macedonian phalanx created by Philip of Macedonia, and he's quite great. He is the great Philip II. He would be called the Great, except for his son will be even greater than he. He conquers all around him, all around Macedonia to the north. It's all barbarians up there. Greeks would have considered Macedonians to be barbarians, but the Macedonians consider the people north of them to be barbarians. And he conquers around there, all around the north. He's a great warrior and a great conqueror. Here's a picture of what his companions might have looked like. One thing I want to point out is they don't have stirrups. The stirrup has not been invented. If you look at their feet, there's no stirrup here. If you watch the movie Alexander with Colin Farrell, they did it pretty accurately. They don't have stirrups. They had to train for that movie not wearing stirrups. It's very hard to ride a horse not wearing stirrups, but these Macedonians could do it. And if you'll notice, they're carrying swords here. You can't really carry as much of a spear. You can't deliver a blow with a spear without falling off your horse. And so spears and lances will be much later once the stirrup comes along. But there is no stirrup at this time. So these Macedonian companions are just great horsemen. One thing about Philip is as he conquers to the north, all these different kingdoms to the north, he will marry in alliance with them. They will give them in tribute one of their princesses. And so he will develop lots of marriages with lots of queens and have lots of children. One of these queens we need to take notice of her because she's going to be the mother of Alexander. This is when he defeated the kingdom of Epirus. This is to the west of him. He married a princess from there named Olympius, not to be confused with the city of Olympia, that's to the south on the Peloponnesus. This is a woman named Olympius. She was a princess. She is married now to Philip to enter his bevy of women, queens, and she's going to be more than he can handle. She is a priestess, so she's devoted to this religious rites involving snakes. If you watch the movie Alexander, the latest movie Alexander, she's always has snakes all over her. And she's quite promiscuous. Part of her cult with these snakes is going to involve sexual orgies and things. So he's bitten off maybe more than he can chew with this wild mountain princess here, Olympius. But she does get pregnant, and she will give him a son, Alexander. However, she doesn't tell Philip this, and this will come up later on. She will say later on, not to her husband because he would disown her and the child, but she will claim that she was raped by Zeus, that Zeus came down in some kind of a form and raped her. He does this quite a bit. He rapes many women and in different forms. And she will claim later on that Alexander is really the son of Zeus, that her boy isn't really Philip's boy, it's really Zeus's son. And if you didn't know better, you would definitely attest to this, to say that this boy is godlike. Alexander, born in 356 to Olympius and Philip II, although she'll claim later on that it's not the son. We'll talk about that later. His father Philip gives him everything a boy could want. You'll be trained by a Spartan, toughen you up, make you like a young Spartan warrior. And for your brain, you'll be tutored by Aristotle. He will call Aristotle up from Athens and pay him grandly to teach the young man all about Greek philosophy and drama and biology, everything else you could possibly want your child educated by the greatest of the Greek sophists. And he's a super athlete. The boy is just a phenom. Again, he appears godlike, this boy. Every biography will point out that his favorite book was the Iliad. To that I respond that that was pretty much every young boy's book. That's about the only book in town. So his favorite book is the Iliad. I just have to report that because every biography reports it. It is interesting, though, that of the characters, and if you read the Iliad, you can kind of pick which character you like. His favorite is Achilles. And again, I remind you, Achilles also is half god. And Achilles also suffers from kind of manic depressive. He's up and he's down. He's extremely violent. He's extremely peaceful. He's a very strange character, and as we see in a second, Alexander's personality is going to be a little bit messed up, maybe a lot like Achilles. Alexander, by all reports, has charisma. This is a godlike quality, the ability to lead people into things that they wouldn't normally do, great things, and he'll become Alexander the Great because his men follow him without question for the most part. He has this godlike charisma. Here's a picture, a drawing of him studying with Aristotle. And again, he's trained to be a Spartan warrior and just a super phenom. The problem comes with his parenting. If you watch the movie Alexander, they actually do a really good job with this, of kind of showing this trouble in the marriage. Again, his father has many wives, and this wife is a handful, and she's very, very defensive of her boy there. She wants her boy to be the next king. And so there's a little bit of trouble here in the family dynamic. Mother and father fall out of love. There's a lot of hatred there between them, and they basically toy with the young teenager's mind. A young teenager pulled between two parents, one parent trying to protect him, the other parent, the father, trying to toughen him up to be king one day. And so the boy is definitely disturbed in a dysfunctional family. Philip continues on with his conquering. He at one point conquers some gold mines up to the north and around him, and he suddenly becomes super rich. He is Jed Clampett, if you will, this hillbilly millionaire, billionaire. And so what do you do with all your money? Well, you need a goal. You need something you want to accomplish. And for him, it's going to be to conquer the Persians. He hates the Persians. This goes back 100 years. When the Persians came through under Xerxes, they occupied Macedonia a couple of times and just raped and pillaged and ravaged the place. And so 100 years later, he wants revenge against these Persians. He wants to destroy that Persian empire. This is his goal. He will build this army for that purpose. His conquering around him now will become the purpose of improving his army and building his army, basically building an empire to defeat the opposing empire. He needs to unite the Greeks. He needs help from the southern Greeks. These people are really wealthy and valuable, and he cannot have them south of him, maybe possibly against him. And so he needs to unite them. He tries diplomacy. They don't buy. They don't want to mess with the Persians. And so he needs to defeat them militarily. He actually will wage war to the south for the purpose of defeating them so that he can unite with them. He'll wage war against Athens and Thebes. And he eventually will defeat them in 338 at the Battle of Chaeronea. Not a battle that you need to know for this class, but he does have to defeat the Greeks to get them in line. And they're grudging. They don't want to really help him. They will devote a payment to phalanx, give him the troops that he wants, but they're really not wholeheartedly into this attack on Persia. They know that this could cause their doom if this goes wrong. So they're grudgingly going to support Philip. He's ready for his invasion of Persia. Here's his Macedonian phalanx, supported by Greeks, supported by light troops, supported by the companion cavalry. He's ready to go in 336. He has his army all built up. They move over to Thrace, getting ready to invade Asia Minor, and then he gets assassinated. Yeah, he gets assassinated. At a ceremony, as they're getting ready to invade, he is stabbed by one of his own men and assassinated. This is going to bring up a question now about the assassin. The assassin himself is killed on the spot, and so who's responsible? This tears everything down. Everything goes into stasis here. Some likely culprits you might be thinking about are his wife. Olympius might be wanting to kill him so that her son can become king. Persians, maybe the Persians paid the assassin. And the more we've investigated this, and they were investigating it also, the assassin himself had a reason to kill him on his own. The assassin had been raped earlier by some men, and when he went to Philip wanting revenge, wanting justice, these men had raped him. Philip told him, well, there'll be you just need to get back in line. And so the man, himself hated Philip. So it might have been just a personal grudge. It might have been the Persians. It might have been Olympius. We don't really know. But Olympius goes to work immediately to make her son the king. She will get rid of these other queens, have them killed, have their sons killed, and her son will be king of the Macedonians. Once he becomes king of the Macedonians now, he has to go around and subdue everyone again. So again, he's only about 18 here. So he becomes king at about 18, and he's got to go conquer the Thracians again, conquer Illyria again, go down against the Greeks, the southern Greeks. He has to conquer the city of Thebes and Athens again. This is where the Achilles part comes in, the rage of Achilles. When he defeats Thebes, he will have the city razed. that they had opposed him and offended him in some way, and he has the city absolutely razed to the ground, has the population sold into slavery. This is the wrath of Achilles in action. And so it may also be to deliver a message that you don't want to mess with him. Once you swear your loyalty to the Macedonians, you need to maintain that loyalty. So he's ready to go now. The other Greeks are definitely in line now with him. And he's ready to go in 334 to do what his father hadn't been able to do, the invasion of Persia. In 334, he invades Persia, crossing the Hellespont, the same way Xerxes had come into Greece. The Macedonians now go back into Asia Minor. He invades Persia with his corps of Macedonians, about 30,000 hoplites in this Macedonian phalanx, supported by 5,000 companions. Those are the noblemen of Macedonia, the wealthy men who ride horses, and all kinds of light infantry around them, and then a few Greek phalanxes also, probably 50,000 men or more, maybe 60,000 invading Persia. What makes him the great isn't that he's just inherited his father's army and to do what his father wanted to do. What makes him great is such a young man, he's about 22 now, he brings siege equipment. He realizes that if you're going to invade Persia, you're going to run into cities, walled cities, and you're going to need to be able to knock these walls down. So he brings siege equipment. He needs the men who can actually